Hi, I'm Sarah Martinez, and this is the story of how my mother-in-law's attempt to destroy my career accidentally launched me into the tech industry's spotlight. For 10 years, I lived in the shadow of my husband's perfect family. The Andersons were the epitome of traditional success: doctors, lawyers, and business executives who measured worth by degrees from prestigious universities and country club memberships. I was the odd one out, the self-taught programmer who preferred coding late into the night over attending their lavish social gatherings. "When will you get a real job?" my mother-in-law, Margaret, would ask during our mandatory Sunday dinners. "Programming is for young men in Silicon Valley, dear. Not for a woman your age." My husband, David, a successful corporate lawyer, would just smile awkwardly and change the subject. He never understood my passion for coding, but he accepted it as my hobby, as his family called it. What they didn't know was that for the past decade, I had been developing something revolutionary. It started as a simple idea during my time teaching coding to underprivileged kids at the local community center. I noticed how difficult it was for them to grasp complex programming concepts using traditional methods. So I began developing an AI-powered educational platform that could adapt to each student's learning style, using gaming elements to teach everything from basic coding to advanced algorithms. I called it CodeMind. Every night, after my teaching job, I would work on my project. The core AI engine took 5 years to perfect. The educational modules took another 3. The gaming elements and user interface took 2 more years. It wasn't just code. It was my life's work, representing thousands of hours of research, testing, and refinement. I kept everything on my personal computer and an external hard drive, both in my home office. Yes, I should have had cloud backups, but I was paranoid about my ideas being stolen before I could patent them. The irony of that decision still haunts me. Last month, during one of her surprise visits, Margaret decided to help by cleaning my home office while I was teaching at the community center. When I returned home, something felt off. My computer had been moved, papers rearranged, and my external hard drive was missing. "Oh, that old thing," Margaret said when I frantically asked about it. "It was just gathering dust, so I deleted everything and threw it in the donation box. You should thank me. Your office looks much more presentable now." My world stopped. "You? What?" I whispered, feeling the room spin. "Mom was just trying to help," David said, looking up from his phone. "You've been wasting too much time on those computer games anyway. Maybe this is a sign to focus on something more productive." Margaret nodded approvingly. "Exactly. Now you can focus on starting a family. That's what a woman your age should be thinking about." I stood there, trembling, as 10 years of work vanished in an instant. The AI engine, the educational modules, the gaming elements, everything was gone. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely type as I checked my computer. She had somehow managed to delete everything there too, probably thinking she was organizing my files. "It's just some computer games," Margaret laughed, patting my shoulder condescendingly. "No need to get so upset. Come, I made your favorite cake." I didn't respond. I couldn't. Instead, I walked quietly to my car and drove to the one place I knew I could think clearly: the community center, where I taught coding. What Margaret didn't know was that 3 days earlier, I had finally submitted CodeMind for patent review. What she didn't know was that I had sent a demonstration video to several major tech companies. What she didn't know was that I had received an email that morning from Microsoft's head of educational technology. As I sat in my empty classroom, surrounded by the computers where my students learned to code, I made 3 phone calls. The first was to my patent attorney. The second was to a data recovery specialist I knew from my teaching days. And the third was to a number I never expected to use, given to me just that morning in a confidential email. "Hello, this is Sarah Martinez," I said quietly into the phone. "Yes, I received your email about CodeMind. No, I'm afraid I can't send you the current build, but I think you'll be very interested in what happened to it. How soon can we meet?" The next 3 days would change everything, not just for me, but for the entire Anderson family and their understanding of what a real job looks like. Margaret wanted me to focus on something more productive. Fine. She thought programming was just for young men in Silicon Valley. Perfect. She believed she had destroyed my computer games. Oh, she had no idea what she had actually done. By the time Microsoft's CEO walked into our living room 3 days later, the Andersons would learn exactly what they had tried to destroy and what it would cost them. The next 3 days were a blur of activity that the Andersons completely misinterpreted. While Margaret smugly told her country club friends how she'd finally helped me break my computer game addiction, I was setting everything in motion. The data recovery specialist, Jin, worked miracles. "Deleted doesn't mean gone," he said, surrounded by equipment in his cramped office. "Your mother-in-law may have cleared the drives, but the base architecture is still there. We just need time." Time was something I had very little of. Microsoft's team was flying in to see the demonstration I'd promised them, but sometimes pressure creates diamonds. For 72 hours, I barely slept. Jin recovered about 60% of the code, enough to rebuild the core AI engine. My students from the community center, many now successful programmers themselves, came together in an incredible show of support. We worked in shifts, reconstructing modules, rewriting algorithms, piecing together years of work in days. "You taught us never to give up," said Maria, one of my first students, now a senior developer at Google. "We're not letting you give up either." The morning Microsoft was due to arrive, I finally went home to change. David and Margaret were having breakfast, discussing my breakdown over my lost game files. "I've scheduled her for an appointment with Dr. Peterson," Margaret was saying, stirring her tea. "He's an excellent therapist. This obsession with computers isn't healthy." "That won't be necessary," I said calmly, pouring myself coffee. "But you both should be here at 2 p.m. We're having company." "Oh," Margaret perked up. "Finally joining one of my charity committees?" I smiled. "Something like that." At exactly 2 p.m., 3 black SUVs pulled up outside our house. David, who had stayed home out of concern for my mental state, watched in confusion as Microsoft's CEO, Sarah Thompson, walked up our driveway, followed by her executive team. "Mrs. Martinez," she said, shaking my hand warmly. "We're very excited about this demonstration. Though I must admit, your email about recent events intrigued me even more than the original proposal." Margaret nearly dropped her teacup. "I led everyone to my home office, now restored to its proper state. The recovered and rebuilt CodeMind was ready to go. But first, I had something to say. Before we begin, I addressed the room. I want to thank my mother-in-law, Margaret. 3 days ago, she deleted my entire project, thinking it was just computer games. She taught me a valuable lesson about backing up data and about family." Margaret's face went pale. David started to say something, but Sarah Thompson's presence made him reconsider. "What you're about to see," I continued, is an AI-powered educational platform that adapts to each student's learning style. It turns complex programming concepts into interactive games. We've tested it with over 500 students at community centers across the city. The results have been extraordinary. For the next hour, I demonstrated CodeMind. The Microsoft team watched as the AI adjusted its teaching style in real time, as students' avatars solved increasingly complex coding challenges through game-like interfaces. I showed them the data: 80% improvement in learning retention, 90% student engagement rate, and a 70% increase in girls and minorities pursuing further programming education. "This is revolutionary," Sarah Thompson said finally. "Exactly what we've been looking for in our educational division. Mrs. Martinez, we'd like to acquire CodeMind for $50 million, with you heading the development team as Chief Innovation Officer." The silence in the room was deafening. "$50 million?" Margaret whispered. "Actually," I said, "I had something else in mind. I'd like to keep majority ownership. Instead of an acquisition, I'm proposing a partnership. Microsoft's distribution network and resources combined with my team's innovation. We keep developing. You help us reach every student who wants to learn coding, regardless of their background." Sarah Thompson smiled. $70 million for 40%. You retain control and become a Microsoft partner. And we fund coding education centers in underserved communities. "Deal," I said. As contracts were being discussed, Margaret tried to backpedal. "Darling, I had no idea. I was just trying to help. You know I've always supported your career." "Save it," I said quietly. "But don't worry. I'm opening a coding education center right next to your country club. Free classes for everyone. And guess what? They're all going to be playing my computer games." The story spread through tech circles like wildfire. The woman whose mother-in-law deleted her life's work, only to have it rise from the ashes stronger than ever. Microsoft's stock rose 3% the day our partnership was announced. David moved out 3 months later, finally realizing we wanted very different things in life. Margaret still shows up at tech events, trying to claim credit for inspiring my success. I let her. Success, I've learned, is the best revenge. CodeMind is now used in schools and community centers worldwide. Every time I see a young girl realize she can code, every time I watch a student from a tough neighborhood discover their potential, I think about those 3 desperate days when everything seemed lost. Sometimes, people try to destroy what they don't understand, but they forget that programmers are really good at one thing: building something better from the crashes. Last week, I received an invitation to give the commencement speech at Margaret's alma mater. The topic? Women in Tech. Breaking barriers and breaking free. I accepted, of course. After all, I have quite a story to tell about how sometimes the best code comes from the worst crashes, and how the delete key isn't always the end. Sometimes it's just the beginning of a better program. As I write this from my new office overlooking Seattle, I can't help but smile. On my desk sits a frame with lines of code, the first program I ever wrote. Next to it stands an award for Most Innovative Educational Technology of the Year. And beside that, a small sign that reads, Error 404, Glass Ceiling Not Found. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about getting ahead and bringing others with you. That's a program worth running.